What's up, military millionaires? I'm your host, David Pere, and I am here with my wonderful co-host, Alexander Felice, and our guest today, Darren Smith, who was in the Army for 6 years and now has been investing in real estate for the past 18 years, including flipping, renting, wholesaling, and now moving into owning millions of dollars worth of industrial properties. And so we're going to just kind of talk through some of that, building a team, and some of the things that Darren has done to achieve this success and be able to take real estate full time. So, Darren, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Military Millionaire Podcast, where we teach service members, veterans, and their families how to build wealth through personal finance, entrepreneurship, and real estate investing. I'm your host, David Pere, and together with my co-host, Alex Felice, we're here to be your no BS guides along the most important mission you'll ever embark on, your finances.
Vehicle 1, you're clear to depart friendly lines.
Roger, Vic 1, Oscar Mike.
Hey, thank you very much, David. Appreciate having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Sure. As you mentioned, in the Army for 6 years, so I got to do quite a bit of traveling with that. Had a good time. I did computers and networking type stuff in the service. So when I got out, I transitioned right into still doing that for the private sector. Fortunately, in one of those early jobs, I was able to sit next to somebody who was big into real estate. They, were flipping a couple houses. I mean, for me, it was huge at the time. They were flipping houses and they had a couple of rental properties. And so it was, for someone who was not exposed to that world at all, it was quite an eye opener. My whole life had been taught to just, get a job, have a W-2, that type of thing. So bottom line, right then and there, I just read every book I possibly could. Went within a couple months, purchased my first live-in flip and did that, and then just proceeded to try and grow it up from there. I'll keep it as short as possible, but I made some good money during the last run-up back in the 2000s, flipping houses. But then I got in over my head. I bought some mobile home parks out of state. Where I had to catch a plane to even go see them, trusted people I shouldn't have trusted, and just made a lot of bad decisions and ended up, getting hurt pretty bad during the crash. So went back. Fortunately, I still had a computer job, continued with that, did that for a couple of years, but really just wanted to get back into real estate. So 2012, 13, got back into real estate in Pennsylvania, moved to Colorado shortly thereafter, lived out there for 4 years, built up a flipping and wholesaling business and built a team up. And then I've since moved back to Pennsylvania a couple of years ago. So I'm still running that team out there of awesome people, and they're running my business in Colorado and in Pennsylvania at this time.
So easy.
That's it. It's so easy. So yeah, that's summarizing 18 years in about 2 minutes there.
Okay. So you got smacked in 2005 for buying out of state, which 2007, I think is, I'm currently actually in Indianapolis, and what's interesting about Indianapolis is the investor pool here is kind of small compared to the amount of out-of-state investors. And there's a lot of out-of-state investors in my market too. And they occasionally, a lot of them are doing their due diligence. Occasionally, some people will buy stuff that I think they're crazy, but they don't really know the area. They just maybe know the numbers or what somebody told them. So are you focused on markets that you know really super well this time? Because we're kind of coming, we're peaking in the market now too. So what are you kind of doing differently between now and then?
We certainly are peaking in the market. I would have to say before somebody should invest outside of their local area, they should just really know what the heck they're doing, like really know it well and have done it, locally. So I'm operating 2 markets at this point in time, but that is because I've done it so much. Back then I was just getting started. So anybody starting out, I would go in your area, find a community that you like, maybe pick a good demographic of lower middle class homes, and just stick to what you know. Because we're probably talking a lot of people who are just getting into this, and you don't want to be doing all over the place and lots of different types of houses and lots of different cities. So what we're doing right now to have success is just what you said. We're sticking with a couple of counties in Colorado where my business was and where my team is. And then we're in about 10 counties here in southern Pennsylvania, but it's areas I know, and we now have the processes and the people and the resources to expand out a little bit. But if I was just getting started, I wouldn't even leave my city.
Yeah, I think some people. Oh, sorry, David. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. That might be a first. Thank you.
Make it snappy. Make it snappy.
I think it's important to distinguish the fact that you are in two different markets, right? And one of them is long distance, but you've lived in both locations. So the key there being knowing the market, because like I got buddies out here in San Diego that I'll tell them some of the numbers I'm running in Missouri, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'll buy that house cash all day." And I'm like, I'm passing on that one. And they're like, "What do you mean?" It's like, well, I understand it's $100,000 house, and to you in California that sounds amazing, but the rent doesn't make sense. It's not going to appreciate $100,000. It's not worth that, and it's like, if you don't know the actual market and you just focus on the numbers, it's like, if you're coming in and buying $1 million house at a 6 cap, maybe it doesn't matter as much as if you're buying small numbers. If you were paying 2 cap, 3 cap, 4 cap in your market, like, okay, got it. But if you're taking on debt and you're trying to compete in that market, you need to compare it to things in that market, not just, I think that's a valid point, that you are in two different markets right now, but you're intimately familiar with both of them and have lived in both of them, as opposed to just, buying in Missouri when you have only known California prices.
Very true.
Also, I think it's going out of state from the start adds a layer of complexity for sure. And it's kind of easier to get scraped and bruised up when you're close by. I started out sort of close, and I did most of my investing out of state. And now that I'm back, especially in this market where it's really competitive, it's like going out of state is starting to put people at a disadvantage, where I think it used to 3-4 years ago. I think there's a big advantage in going out of state because you could leverage, like David said, you could leverage that region's money into a cheaper market. But now, where I think it's so competitive, I think definitely sticking where you're at is going to give you a high competitive advantage. Because if you're competing face to face against somebody who's having to call in, like, I just have a speed advantage, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sticking local. In fact, even to emphasize that point, that I learned the lesson was what I'm doing with commercial real estate right now. I am only doing local here in my local area. Whereas I bought houses in probably 5 or 6 other states, just dabbling here and there. I'll take some risks, but for me, I need to be able to go and sit down and in front of that person. I will say one thing on the speed though. My entire Pennsylvania business is run by people in Colorado, so it's actually kind of interesting. About twice a month they may have me go pick up run an errand or something for them at a house, but other than that, we've transitioned so much to phone because of COVID. Really, that was we'd kind of been doing it a little bit before, but we were about 90% in-person visits and 10% on the phone. And now, honestly, our first visit 100% of the time is a phone visit, and then maybe we'll follow it up with an in-person. But that's maybe 10% of the time, 15% of the time we need an in-person. Other than that, it's all done just over the phone and with Adobe DocuSign.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I like that for sure.
Yeah, but I still think there's definitely I do still think there's an advantage to being around local. Like you said, if nothing else, it's like you get used to that market. You know it. You start knowing the neighborhoods. One of the best things that I've done, my partner, every time it's like a running joke. Every time I ask him how much something rent for, he's like, "Oh yeah, I got a property in that neighborhood. It'll rent for this everywhere in town." And that's invaluable. Now maybe somebody else can find him out of state, but it's like I hang out with him 4 days a week. Like, you just can't beat that relationship. So being close to the ground and having those relationships, if nothing else, is highly valuable.
And I think there's something to be said for just the speed, right? So I bought my first house in Missouri, and then I moved, and I haven't lived back there since, and I'm moving back there in like 3 months. But even and I have I would say a pretty solid team. I've got people who will look at a house for me, and meet as soon as I can connect them with the seller. I've got a guy who will clean houses out. I got maintenance guys. I got property manager, whatever. I've got a fairly good team at this point. And yet I still feel like if I was there physically, even if whether it was me or like me and an acquisitions guy who sat next to me, things would just be able to move faster, because it would just be like, there are still times where I'm like, yeah, hey, you link up and try to find a time to go to the house. Whereas if the seller was like, yeah, that sounds good, I'd be like, great, when are you free? Awesome, I'll meet you there. And no matter what, like, I'll be there at this time to look at the house. And there's still a little bit of a lag, even with 5 years of having a good team, that I'm just excited to be there in person, where it's like, okay, yeah, I can drive by that house today in preparation for my call if I want to, or I can, instead of, there's things that I have to do sequentially to make sense before I start wasting my team's time at this point, that I'd be okay driving by a house on my way home. Or,
well, what about, you're talking about team building, Darren. What about team building, not for, hey, I'm able to go to this house because I'm close, but how about I can hang out with these people and have those conversations more often face to face, and that develops deeper relationships. Do you want to talk about that side of it a little bit?
So do you mean me building a relationship with the team, or the team building a relationship with the sellers?
I mean, you and them working together, like face to face. It's much, in my experience, and maybe, people are just different. I mean, I definitely think tele networking is going to have more value, but after COVID, since we're all doing a lot more tele networking, I actually think the value in face-to-face relationships is far higher than I had realized. I think it's gonna be much harder to replace than I had thought before.
Yeah, I think the value of it is it's only getting more and more valuable just because we're getting less and less of it. So I agree with you having
That's a good point.
That face-to-face contact. It's harder to do these days and harder to get in front of them. So when you can do it, people are really going to appreciate that much more. As far as me and my team, I actually just passed the 1 year mark of not going back out to Colorado to visit and hang out with those guys, which it's mind blowing to me. I was there. I probably flew out about 10 times a year the first 2 years that I was doing it. So back and forth all the time, and the in-person meetings are invaluable, the stuff we would come up with. So we've just had to find ways of working around it. I can't say it's as good, because it's not, but we've been able to make it work, and we've made some huge pivots and changes. I think also because I had that relationship with them where we had hung out for so many times, we had that build up. But if I was doing it from scratch with somebody who I just only had met on the video, yeah, that would be super tough.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next, where it's one thing if I can go away now because my team and I are, we're super tight, and hey, I'll fly back a couple times a year, or maybe not fly back at all. Like, we're friends for life. We're bonded for life, but that would never have happened if I had to do it over phone calls. So,
yeah,
I started a long time. Like, I've been making content about long distance investing for a while. And I think over the last 18 months, it's definitely shifted to, hey, find the deals, find the people to manage it, just keep on, give it them work, and you'll build that relationship, fly back once in a while. And now I think because of the way the market is, I definitely think there's value in being boots on the ground more so than there was 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. I miss the heck out of it. You touched on there, finding the deals. I know, I'm sure you have a lot of people kind of starting out in real estate, trying to figure out, how do we find these deals? I mean, we've bought, a couple hundred houses at this point, and I wish I had like some clear cut answer, but as much as we said on focusing on your location, I think the exact same thing applies to focusing on your marketing. And so there's a lot of things that work out there, and your listeners have probably, read the list of, dozens and dozens of ways of marketing and finding buyers. There's really expensive ones, and there's ones that take a lot more time, but are cheaper. And one thing that I've learned on this, and we're even getting back to, like, we've been so diverse on our marketing, but we're coming back and we're trimming down and we're cutting out things, and we're doing less and deeper marketing. And so if people are trying to find these deals, there's no one best way out there, but find that neighborhood you like. Maybe it's a couple thousand houses, maybe it's a zip code, maybe it's your whole city if it's small enough. But like, learn everything you possibly can about that area, drive it around, as you said, and like knock doors, put up flyers, like walk the streets at different times of day to learn, what's hot, talk to other investors, and then pick your one type of marketing you want. Maybe you're doing probate, maybe you're doing foreclosures, maybe you pick 100% equity homes, or however you're pulling your lists, and then just really dive into that a lot. Call them, text them, mail them on a small list. So if you're just getting started, stick small. Maybe it's a couple dozen, maybe it's a couple hundred, maybe you can do 1,000 if you have the budget for it. But just do that one thing, that one type of marketing to those people over and over, and make that work before you branch out. So just like location, you want to stay in narrow. I would say marketing, do the same thing, because it's so easy to outspend yourself, and you can spend all your money in like 2 months and not get a deal, and then you're done. Whereas if you stick small and narrow, that'll drag out, it'll last a bit longer, get better success.
There's so much parallel to that advice as there's the first thing you said is like, hey, look, start in your market. And so those two ideas are so similar. It's like, dude, start with what you know you can get done And then as you get better, expand, but like niche it down, start in your market, start with a 3-2 that rents for $1,000, whatever the case is, like get that. And then it's like, hey, look, when your cup overfloweth, then, expand. So I love that those ideas are parallel in the same like overarching strategy.
Yeah, it's crazy when you hear people say they're sending 12, 15, 20,000 mailers a month, right? And I compare that to what I'm doing right now, which is like 2,000. I'm basically sending like 4,000 a quarter right now. And then I talk to people and 4,000 a quarter sounds crazy to them. And I'm like, well, when I first started mailing, like the first list I ever mailed, I hand wrote like 120 letters because I was too cheap to pay for letters. And then I basically dropped them in mailboxes because I was like, I could buy stamps, but I'm going to knock on a door. And if they don't answer, I'm going to put this in their mailbox. And I just wrote like, the address. Like I'm like standing outside, like writing the address on the letter as I'm like sticking it in the mailbox. If they
I love it.
And that didn't work at all. But, it was, I didn't have the, you start out and I continued going back to them. I got some very interesting phone calls out of that. I was absolutely in the wrong neighborhood because I didn't know what I was doing. But put in perspective, I got a phone call from a $20 million homeowner who was like, dude, are you like, you're in the military, you're not buying my house. Or like literally asked me if I was a front runner for Obama. This was out in Hawaii. And so I was like, okay, well, that's probably not the people I need to be marketing to. So the two main phone calls I remember out of this list of like 100 people was someone who thought I was like the President Obama at the time's front runner, and somebody who was Donald Rumsfeld's son. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm doing this wrong. But anyway, all that to say, like I kept doing the small, handwritten, cheap, affordable things back in my Missouri market, and it worked. And yet now I'm doing that on a bigger scale. But because it worked, I wasn't spending $4,000 every couple months on mailers when I first started real estate investing. I would never have made it if I didn't find a deal doing that in the first go. I would have been done. That would have been it.
That's exactly that right there. The fact that you did that though, that's what it takes. That kind of drive, that kind of like motivation to get out there and do that, not just once, but over and over and over again. Those are the people you hear those stories who've been successful over and over again because they did the hard stuff. I when I was working computers every day on my way home, I would spend several hours putting door hangers on different neighborhoods that I loved. And just like you, it didn't work. I don't know if I got a single deal from those door hangers, but the fact that, I spent, starting out months doing that for hours a day and then going home, handwriting bandit signs, driving my truck around town, hammering them in, all those things you do when you're hungry and they're cheap and they're things that you can do on your own. And you get used to being embarrassed too. That's kind of the thing. Like you think, oh, I'm hanging this on the door. I remember when I first doing that or hammering in the sign. I don't do bandit signs anymore. I haven't in years, but it was one of those things you had to get over people being embarrassed and just talk with people. And I think if you can do those things that are out of your comfort zone and put you in those places, you're more likely to go talk to a seller. Because let's be honest, guys, when you're getting started, just talking to a seller can be scary as heck. The first time the phone rings, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I say?
I hate it.
Yeah, I love what you did.
The phone rings and I'm like, oh, I have a call center at this point that I use or people to take my calls because even after 3 years of being a recruiter for the military, I just do not like when the phone rings and I'm like, oh, is this going to be another like, screw you, lose my number? Like, I just don't want to deal with this. And so I finally was like, yeah, this is not my strength. Like I like making phone calls. Like if it's a motivated seller, like, so I basically have someone screen them out and then set an appointment. And I'm like, I like the motivated seller. Let me get on the phone and sell, build rapport or whatever. I don't like the like, hey, this is Dave with Freedom Property. All right. And my day has started now. Like, I don't do that. I don't do that very well. I kind of got over that in life. So, but so,
one point though, you just found if someone's getting started this, find the thing you hate the most and hire for that. So we can get into a hiring conversation. But yeah, if you don't like something, find that person first. You got a call center. I have a great lead manager. That was one of the first things I offloaded too, because answering that phone, that sucks.
Hey, Darren, I don't like doing any work. Can I outsource everything? Can I do?
You not for a very long time. I'm in some masterminds and then a really good one where there are people who are running, multiple 100 properties a year businesses that only work in it for a couple of hours a week. But that took years to achieve that level. And those people are way smarter than me.
Oh, I'm very smart. That's easy. So yes is what you're saying.
I said the wrong thing. Not that they're so much smarter than me. They are. They're so much. How do I say it? They're much more dedicated than me. Like their work ethic, and I work very hard, but their work ethic is on another level. Like they are able to do. Oh
no, I don't want to do any work. You're missing my point here.
You have to do a crap ton of work at that point. So no, you're out.
What's the Bill Gates quote about if you want to find an efficient way to do something, hire a lazy person because they'll find the most efficient way to do it? I love that mentality. I used to joke on recruiting duty. I was like, all the best recruiters are fat. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, the guys who don't want to spend all this time doing all this extra work are the guys who will find the fastest way to get someone to enlist. They were like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then we did like an award ceremony at the end of the year and all the best recruiters were fat. And I was like, yeah, that's what I thought. Like all the lazy dudes. Because I got to the point of recruiting duty where it was like, how do I do the least amount of work to still get 3 people to enlist? Yeah, I want that answer. Not how do I do the most amount of work and enlist the most amount of people? Like, how do I do the least and meet what I'm supposed to meet? But then, of course, anyway. What's up, military millionaires? I wanted to briefly talk about a service I offer that a whole lot of people don't seem to know about, and I guess that's a failure on my part for not having discussed it enough. So look, finding a realtor that understands investing and or the VA loan or both is not always the easiest thing in the world. And finding a lender, same thing. So what I have started doing is I've built I have a large network, but I've started to compile it all together finally as a legitimate Excel document driven, location driven list for you guys essentially. So what it is basically just my way of helping connect you with a realtor or a lender that I know personally and have vetted and talked to and understand that they're not going to screw you. And what I do is, like, for example, I had a market where I had 2 or 3 agents that I all sent the same person as a connection and said, hey man, I trust, I know all of these. Let me know what you think. And they all said the same agent and same thing. So what I've done is if there's multiple agents in the same market, I choose the best one, and that's who I'm going to hook you up with. But the whole point of this is just to help ensure that you get connected to the best agent. So if that is something that you would like, just go to the website, go to FromMilitaryToMillionaire.com/VA-Realtor/ or just reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, whatever. I'll send you the link, or you can find it on the resources page of the website. But look, all it is a way to help connect you with an agent who's going to hook you up. No, I don't charge a fee for you. No, I don't charge a fee for the agent. It's just a way to hook you guys up. At the end of the day, as a buyer, you're not going to pay for a realtor anyway. So, ta-da, it's magic. You might as well use one. As far as VA lender, I've got a really good one that I work with and know very well. There's several others that are pretty good, and I'll probably try to steer you away from some companies that I just don't think are very reputable or have been very helpful. So, if this is a service that sounds good to you for free 99, then reach out. And if not, then enjoy the show right now. So I guess on that note, like you're talking about building a team and hiring some of this out. Like, what are some of the things I'm actually gearing up to hire? I just read the book Who, and I've read Who Not How, and I've got a phone call next week with someone that I respect in this regard. But I'm gearing up to hire my first full-time, I guess you'd say admin, like basically just handle all this stuff that I'm really bad at that involves like the uploading of content and the sending stuff to my editor and replying to emails and all that junk. I guess I would just ask, like, what are your thoughts on when you're gearing up for like your first hire? What are some things you wish you'd known when you first started building out a team and genuinely going from, hey, I've got some people who help me because they're involved in the process to like, okay, now I need to bring in like actual dedicated full-time help?
Yeah, there's so many ways you can go with that question. And that is an amazing book. So I love that you've read that before you got started. I'll give you a great start. The 2 main things to talk about is one, like, how you hire the people and then build those people as like, pour yourself into them, make sure that you're helping them, achieve their goals and stuff. So there's that side of it. And then there's just making sure they're actually doing the stuff that you need to get done and have processes and systems behind that. So from the hiring side, I love automating that as much as possible for me. So I use a system called Wise Hire. I think it's $200 a month. So that it is a little bit pricey, but you don't have to use that. But something where you can have the people screen themselves automatically. So if you post a Craigslist ad or a Facebook ad, make sure they have to do something. They have to, I like to have them go do a disc test DISC test. It takes, a couple of minutes, and then email it to me, and then book something on my Calendly link here. And what that does is that makes them jump through a few hoops. So you're not just getting 50,000 people, sending you a resume and saying, here, hire me, and it's garbage. So that's kind of step one. Going through the interview process, there's some great books out there. I could dive into that a bit, but just make sure you really, what have they done that they've been really successful at? What has excited them? What has driven them? And it doesn't matter if it's in the same field or not. I don't really care if they have the knowledge, but what have they done that they've just crushed it? Maybe it was high school sports. You're hiring somebody out of school. Maybe they were, a salutatorian or whatever. But I want to know that they've been successful and driven at something. Once you have them on your team and you've got them there, you're working with them. You really just want to know what are their goals? Like, do they have, what are they trying to achieve? And does the role that you are putting them in help them get there? So if their goal, is they want to be a salesperson. Well, if you're hiring for an admin job, that's probably not a good fit, just because, you're not helping them learn the skills and get to where they want to be. One of my employees, his goal is to own a bunch of rentals. So he's my lead manager. He is doing great. He's actually flipped, I think, 2 or 3 properties in the last year that he's bought through the company. And so we're helping him achieve his goals, not just in the role, but in life in general. So there's a whole lot more to that, but that's that side of it. As far as what you're having them do, you want to make sure, I go through the list of eliminate, eliminate, automate, delegate. I think that's the order that I use. So go through what you're doing, and your admin test, write down what you do every day for like a week or two, just all those little things. And then what do you hate? Oh, I hate answering the phone. Okay. That's the job you want to hire. For an admin person, write all those things down, and then you figure, what am I doing that I don't need to be doing? I can just stop doing it, get rid of those. What can I automate? Maybe there's a system I can make this easier. Maybe I can automatically have that list sent somewhere to be uploaded. Okay, if I can't do that, well, now we need to delegate this. But when you're delegating, you want to make sure that you have an actual process that they can follow. If you just said, hey, download that list and put it in there, put it in this system, well, there's about 50 steps probably in there that you don't really think about that they can mess up. So the system we use is it's a free Chrome plugin called Loom, Loom. And what it does, it's a video capture, and you can make 5-minute videos for free. And so we just make a little screen capture of what you're doing, and your little videos on there, and you talk through it, and it shows them the process of what it is you do step by step. And then we take that, we put into a software called Asana. It's just a project tracking software, and you lay out the high level steps. We don't get into super detail because it takes forever. And if you're going to be delegating them, 30 tasks to do, you can't spend all your time tracking that. So that's just it. We, when you have them do something, make a little quick video of what it is, put it in that Asana. And then in the beginning with people, I don't do this later on. It's a weekly or monthly report, but in the beginning, I want them letting me know every day, what is it I got done that day? And then what are my plans for the next day, just to make sure we're on the right track. So for an admin, that's a excellent thing you want to have them do, just because it is so many little things. So I know that was a lot, but that's kind of the high level for how you bring someone on and then have them doing the right stuff.
I really like that. And I actually really like the fact that what have they been successful at? And not that it matters if they've been successful in your specific field, but just that there's been something that they've exceeded at. And I've noticed that in life, and I kind of clicked while you were saying it, that like the people who do well in life seem to be so like I have a bunch of buddies from high school that are all Eagle Scouts, right? I was an Eagle Scout, whatever. But like when I think back to high school and I'm like, what are the people who I think of that are like, they made it, like they did something worthwhile? Like, man, of all the guys I know who are Eagle Scouts, like they're all doing something really successful. And it has nothing to do with being a Boy Scout. I think it just has something to do with like, if you're doing like the ability to like, if you're doing something, do it well. And I think that's like I mean, that just makes sense, right? Like it doesn't have to be pursuant to any specific skill set, but if you're that kind of person, like you're not going to want to do anything what's the phrase? Anything worth doing is worth doing well or worth doing right or whatever. And people with that mentality will succeed. And I think that's a cool point that I hadn't really thought of in the hiring process, but makes absolute sense to me.
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing I said of all of that. So yeah, you keyed on the best. That was the cream.
That's cool. All right. let's see, there was one other, we're going to talk about some private lending and how you've been able to use the lending side to kind of scale your business a little bit.
Yes, and this is something that I want to tell people to be a bit cautious on, especially in the beginning, because private lending, it's a tool, but it's something that can be dangerous as well. If used the wrong way, or if you're getting in a bit over your head. For me personally, and what I would recommend anybody is, if you are working with private lenders, I only use that money for buying and rehabbing houses. And that could be ones I'm holding, or it could be ones I'm flipping, whatever it is. I don't want to touch anybody else's money for anything that's operational in a business. So I'm going to put that caveat right up front. If you're borrowing money to pay for your marketing that you may never see back, that could be dangerous, because now you may just end up with no money, and you're working your job to pay somebody back for something that there's nothing equity tied behind it. So I tie mine with deeds of trust to a property.
Can does that specifically have to do with collateral, or does it have to do with exit strategy?
It has to do with collateral. So that's it. I mean, I know people that have borrowed for operations, but yeah, for me, I want to know if I'm using somebody else's money, that money is secure and is secured against something. And maybe I have it tied with the deed of trust. Maybe it's just they're lending it to me on a personal or a private note, but I have it earmarked as rehab for this property. I know where it is, what it's going towards, and I have plenty of equity in that property. So if something went badly, I know my private lender is getting paid back. That's just paramount to me to make sure that happens. So.
Yeah. So I spent I spent some time in commercial underwriting, and from a bank's perspective, that's the first and most important thing. And I think people underappreciate it from the outside. Like from a banker's perspective, I'm like, dude, collateral is one first and only. That's the biggest risk mitigator. That's the number one thing that the banks care about. They don't care how your track record. It's like, is the money secured against as a non-depreciating asset? Yeah, cash. We do, like, SBA will do cash loans for cash flow businesses, but it's a smaller percentage and it's much harder, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, you just want to do ops. You just want to do what's going to be a cash flow business. We have nothing to sell if you default. Yeah. So that line of thinking, and I think people, the advice I'm trying to make for listeners is, if you're going out there and looking for private lending money, or you're trying to be a private lender, collateralization is kind of what you said. And then I know this from the bank side is like paramount, number one.
Man, I love hearing that from the banker side. I don't know much about banking. I don't have a couple bank loans, but most of it's private money. So it's nice to hear that I'm on the right track there.
Collateralization.
I just signed my first deed of trust and mailing it in tonight for my first 100% private money buy and flip. So I've done like promissory notes with like friends where it's like a piece of the money or whatever, and like on the lender side. But this is my first like completely 100% private money. I'm not going to have any cash in the deal. That's not like a large like pool of investors or anything. So kind of cool, kind of exciting. So kind of glad that you mentioned that was the document you used. So I'm on the right path here.
Yeah, congratulations. That's a huge step. Like your first no money deal, like where you bought a property with $0. I mean, actually, I bought a property earlier this year where I got a check for like $50,000 at closing. Now, granted, it went towards some of the rehab and stuff like that, but it was, when you do stuff like that, you're like, wow, this really can work. Now, again, back to make sure you have the collateral, make sure you have the equity in the property to do something like that. Don't just go borrow willy-nilly, but I'm sure you didn't.
Yeah. No, I think this one will be a really quick move, but I also have a property with, 3 times the equity of this deal closing on the 1st of April. So I'm like, if the world ends, I'll just pay him out of that. Like I'm just,
that's it.
Whatever it takes to make sure my first like legit private lending deal goes well enough that he will be a good reference for me. So,
and you said it right there. I've lost money on several deals, and not that I was hiding anything, but my lenders didn't even know. They still got their interest. They still got their return, everything at the closing, and it was all completely transparent to them. So making sure they're whole, even if you have to take it out of something else or whatever you got to do. I love that you can do that. Your reputation's everything.
Yes, that I've learned. Well, not that my reputation. It sounds really weird to say that yourself, right? Like you're like, oh, my reputation, but the reality is like I've had conversations with people over the last year where it's like, sorry, man, like my reputation's not worth that risk, and I've come to realize that like in the real estate world. It's like you saw what was his name, the turnkey operator who went down like a year and a half ago. No, I don't want to say went down, but like the reputation went out the window, and all of a sudden it was like everybody and their mother stayed clear. It's like realistically, I mean, that's it, right? People will lend to you. The guy who's lending on this deal to me, prior to talking terms on this lend, we had never had a phone call. It was just I sent out an email and he was like, "Yeah, man, I want in." Oh, okay. Well, that's only reputation, right? So, who am I to tank that? And then now I'm screwed. So
Interesting.
I'm going to assume that means Alex's wonderful Wi-Fi just cut out on us.
No, he was on the phone there, but that's all right. We can go into the private lending part a little bit more. So that's how you secure the money, and then just my general philosophy about it. As far as raising it, I'll be honest, I am not that good at raising private money. It's taken me years to do it. I still do it. It's part of my regular process where I have tasks several times a week of calling people who have expressed interest or who have returned an email or something that said, yeah, I might be interested in something like that. So it's something I'm constantly working on because you're always trying to get more money and then try and get, lower rates. So to promote another, somebody else who I've been following their system for a while, and I've gotten some success out of it. It's a company, a 7-figure flipping, and it was
Bill
30 days to $500,000. So it's like $100 for this 30-day video series. And if you Google that, I recommend it. I mean, I could sit here and, talk for an hour on it. He's going to tell you way more.
Bill's a good friend of ours.
Yeah, I was gonna say Bill. We co-hosted a veterans event last year with Bill, so big fans for sure.
Bill Allen is awesome. He certainly is. Yeah, I've learned an absolute ton from that guy. So he's one of the ones who way smarter and way more driven. He spends a couple hours a week in his business, and they're doing millions a year. So that's just in his wholesaling flipping business. So
he was actually who came to mind when you were saying that, and I was like, yeah, but he's got, well, I mean, realistically, let's be honest. He's got one guy on his team who looks like a professional football player. And that's really why he's,
that's totally it. It's how he looks.
Anyway, oh man, that's awesome. That's good stuff. But you're right. I think it is like, well, shoot, I'm paying you mentioned the more people you talk to about private money, the lower you can get as far as the money you're having to pay them. I am 100% overpaying on this as far as what people want when they do private money. I mean, this is more expensive to me than hard money would be. This is because the deal's going to work. I'm going to make money. Like he's going to make a lot of money on it too. But I wanted to make it worthwhile on my first one to make sure like, okay, cool. Everything goes well. Happy investor, happy life, happy whatever. But going forward, I'm not going to be offering the same kind of terms to people. And I think that's kind of the key is like, okay, now that I'm good, now this is a proven system. Now I need to build this up to where I can have more desirable terms with people.
Yeah. Well,
I did the same when I flipped I started flipping houses. I've only done a few, but the first few, it was like I paid a lot to the borrowers or to the lenders because I was like, hey, look, take a risk, take a chance on me, even though I've rehabbed a bunch of houses. I've never exited one as a flip. So take a chance on me. I'll pay you a high cut, way more than I need to, so that, to build some of that goodwill. And then now, even only a few flips in, it's like, now I have money that's so cheap, not on a lot of volume, but some people that'll fund my flips where it's like, I can have to pay you more than you asked because you undercharged me.
But see what you just did there. So answer this then. How was the rate set on those people who are paying too little?
They offered it.
Exactly. So David, you should watch that 30-day video, that series we haven't. And that was when you said, I shouldn't offer rates that high. So you're not offering rates at all. You're talking to them about what they need. It's just like buying a house. That's the exact same thing. You're providing a service to that person when you buy their house. It's the same thing with getting private money. You're providing a service that person by allowing them to earn interest, on their money. Granted, we want that money. We need that money to run our business. It's the grease, but you're helping them out and find out what they need, find out what interest they want. But yeah, it's a good series.
That's awesome. All right, Darren, we got a few questions that we ask every guest.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So the first one is if a 18, 19-year-old E1, E2 walked up to you asking you for advice, what would be the one thing that you feel like you'd have to tell them about, whether it's life or real estate or, whatever?
Gosh, it, on the spot, I'd have to go back to what we talked about before on that focus, that narrow and deep when you're first starting out. And if I'm an 18-year-old and I'm just getting started, I'm gonna pick one small area. I'm gonna pick one thing that I really like, that I want to do, and just dive in deep, and then be consistent about it. Success, it's being narrow and focused, and then success is doing that over and over and over again. I mean, it's really boring, a lot of the stuff we do. It's being able to do the tedious, boring things over and over are what eventually, lead you to not have to do those anymore and to be successful. So just focus, go narrow and focus.
I like it.
Success is boring. I like that you said that. I know that's not a universal truth, but I think some people get in this, it's like they hate their jobs because it's so monotonous. So they want to start their own business, and then they start one and they're like, it's monotonous. And it's like, okay, like some of this is monotonous. Some of it's like, especially, I do rentals. It's like, dude, I don't do anything. The money comes in. everything I have to do with rentals is something new. But I just love that you said that because I don't know, it resonates with me personally, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. All right. Question number 2 is, what is a resource that you would recommend to anybody looking to get started in real estate?
So, everybody thinks of books and software and all those other things, but for me, the biggest resource is networking with other people. And so, joining some type of mastermind, even if it's at an entry level, getting out and just being able to talk to as many people as you can. Maybe there's a local RIA group that you can follow someone around and work with them. But networking, that's I know it's a stupid resource, but like, talk with as many people as you can. The 7-figure flipping group I'm in, I think they have like an entry level one, like where you're on a Facebook group and you can ask questions and they can respond. Bigger Pockets is another great one. So these are all resources they've probably heard of, but that's where you're going to get more out of. Whereas I've read almost every real estate book out there, but they're always on like one specific thing, and they're not going to give you kind of the breadth you need. So yeah, people.
I'd like to plug David's mastermind, the War Room, because he won't do it enough. To be honest, I bought a 52 unit in December, and there's no way I was even on the trajectory to close that kind of deal without that War Room. So awesome. There are a lot of masterminds out there, but this guy runs one, or wherever it is on the screen.
Join the War Room. I mean, well said. I mean, the people in there closing 52 unit deals. If you're looking to get into multifamily or flipping houses, sounds like that's the place.
I appreciate the shout out, Alex. Man. Yeah, no, I agree completely that people are probably, I don't even want to say probably, they're the best resource, the best investment that I've made, and they've given the best return. And it's amazing how much they'll surprise you in life, right? You never know who's going to come out of left field. And I mean, like we were just talking about, right? Someone's lending me $50,000 on a deal that, I mean, that's, as far as the Marine Corps goes, that's more than my W-2 taxable salary. And they're just like, hey, yeah, sure. We talked on the phone. I trust you. Here's some money. Like, oh, well, that's cool. So it's
crazy.
Yeah. It's people for sure. I agree. Darren, this has been a lot of fun. This is good. I feel like we could talk for a long time about a lot of things. Where can people get a hold of you if they'd like to reach out? Where's the best place to point people?
They could shoot me an email. My color of business is Sell My House to Smith. So it's Darren, DARREN at sellmyhousetosmith.com. Shoot me an email and I'd be happy to help anybody or talk about whatever they want.
I love it. Easy. It's easy to remember, and I will absolutely link to it in the show notes and make sure we point people your direction, brother.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David and Alex. Y'all have a great night. I had a great time. Thank you.
Darren, you're the man.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode about my journey from military to millionaire. If you liked it, be sure to visit FromMilitaryToMillionaire.com/podcast to subscribe to future podcasts. While you're there, we'd love for you to rate the show, give us a review on iTunes. Now get out there and take action.